All right, HubSpot implementation. Setting everything up, it's probably one of my favorite things to do in terms of HubSpot projects, but there are some things which are really important and essential while doing that implementation. So I will tell you some of those things and let me know then at the end or in the comments if you think that those things are important and if you would add some others. Let's start with the data dictionary, right? So data dictionary, it's simply an Excel document where you have all the fields that were existing before in case you are migrating from a different system, let's say Salesforce. So you would have the Salesforce field, usually the API value or the internal value, the format, either it's a free text field or a calculated property or a numbered property, a radio select, a drop-down value, as well the values in case you have a drop-down value, and then the matched, in this case, property for HubSpot. So there are tons of standard properties already in, like first name, last name, company, address, phone number, that it can immediately match with the previous system. But there are some others that you need to create new custom properties. So while you're creating that, you should as well make sure you have everything documented in a data dictionary. And in case you are integrating to HubSpot to another CRM, so there's an ongoing sync, you should as well make sure that you have for each one of those properties what kind of sync is happening. Is it a two-way synchronization? Is it one-way, or if there's no sync at all for some reason? All right, so after all the properties are created, it's time to import. So you should have all the properties, by the way, for all the main objects, deals, contacts, and companies. You might have a custom object. If you do, you as well need to create those. But for the import, it's important to have all the properties, and sometimes you need to do some data manipulation on the CSV file, but usually the import and the data mapping works very well. Apart from importing the properties for each object, you need as well to import the activities. And why is that important? Because your sales rep will probably ask for the activities they were usually which were usually available in the previous system, like calls, tasks, or emails. So you will need that in HubSpot as well to make sure that you have some record data, some historical data, and your sales rep are not freaking out. Quick note on properties. It might be that there are some conditional logic attached to it. For instance, in deal stage, when the deal stage is set to close lost, it's very common that we want to fill in as well the close lost reason. And so there wouldn't be a conditional logic behind it to make sure that every time a sales rep is setting the close lost value, that property is mandatory and is showing up as a required property to fill in. So that those kind of logics behind the properties need as well to be defined and implemented. All right, after all this, at the same time, you can also start to set up other things like the DNS and SPF record. Super important to make sure that you are that your email is authenticated and you don't end up in a spam folder. Another thing as well is to make sure that your HubSpot tracking code is implemented. You can do that in the source code of your website. Probably you need IT for that, or you can as well do that through a tag in Google Tag Manager. Then email settings. So you have to set up double opt-in. If you're in Europe, it's mandatory. You need to set up and subscription page. You need to set up the opt-in or privacy policy constant, like the text that shows up in the forms. And also marketing and sales subscriptions are already in, but if you want to have other subscriptions, you need to set that up too. Another super important thing is forms. So you will have to create forms either because they are already existing and you want to replace them, so you can embed the new ones from HubSpot to your website, or you can as well, if you're using another form tool, you can as well, and you should as well integrate that into HubSpot to have the data flowing into HubSpot. But either way, to forms, you have to decide which kind of fields you need, labels, default values, hidden fields, mandatory, thank you messages, notifications, if you're creating a new content or not, what kind of content are you created, ideally elite in terms of the lifecycle stage. So all of that in terms of forms need to be set up as well. And email templates. So for sequences, I would say for sales sequences, I would say that it's important to start talking with your sales team and define what kind of snippets we want to create and what kind of sequences we want to create, like follow-up sequences or something like that. As well, for marketing is very important. You don't want people to be choosing one different template every time they are creating a new email. So having a couple of templates predefined, it's really, really important. Another thing to define is pipeline stages and the pipeline itself. So how many pipelines you need. Stages are already predefined in HubSpot. We already have some already, but ideally or usually those are customizable, and in most cases those need to be changed as well, along with creating or defining the criteria to move one deal from one stage to the other. So that's something that you should have your sales team in a room defining what kind of criteria is important and if we want to automate that or not, and then implement that into the system. Another thing is integrating third-party tools. So let's say Sales Navigator, if you want to integrate that, make sure you do that and all the data is flowing into the system in the right way. Another thing that's usually easy setup, you have a centralized place where you can define the branding. So the logo, 5 icon, colors, fonts. So you should do that. Obviously, there's no specific order apart from the data migration and the data sync and the data mapping thing, everything else. I would say that email authentication is as well one of the first things, but everything else is not a specific order for it. And branding is one of them. So usually you would set that up, it's centralized, then you make sure everything is consistent, as well as the footer where you have usually the company address, the company phone number, and that's very important as well to be included then later in emails. Last but not least, two last things, user management. User management is very important because during the implementation phase, you probably just have your implementation partner and a couple more people. But when you're opening up the system to everyone and onboarding your marketing and sales and service team, you need to make sure that you choose the right people that should have super admin rights, because super admin rights or super admin permissions need as a paid seat, and those paid seats need to be managed. So not everyone needs that. So make sure you choose the right people that should have a super admin permission, which includes or requires a paid seat. And then reports. So you will probably want to have some custom reports, but just bear in mind that reports and dashboards are really, really cool in HubSpot. There's a lot of standard possibilities which are very good and really contain the main KPIs, but of course that's one of the things that we have to set up. Alright, so like I said in the beginning, if there's one specific thing that you would add to this list that you think it's very essential for the first and initial setup of HubSpot, let me know in the comments, and thank you for watching. See you next time.